And Mr. Adan Shaw, thank you very much for agreeing to join me on the podcast. And we've just been sort of catching up before we've hit the live and record button. Um, yeah, I came across your stuff online on Instagram of all places, as most people come across their interests and start doom scrolling at like sort of 2 a.m. in the morning. And and obviously, you know, I think your profile on Instagram is like almost one of them dream sort of, when you look at influencers, you think, oh, I wish I had a life like that. Oh, I wish I could do that. And then you'll come across yours where you like the top three pin posts are like you're highlining across these massive mountains and amazing scenery at sunsets. And don't get me wrong, you never catch me up there. I've done the bungee jumping, and that's about as far as I go. But it's awesome. And I think what's always fascinating me, and I know I mentioned it before, is I want to get into how you get into it to a start, but the mindset of sort of going, what's wrong? What's wrong with just playing tennis or playing badminton or playing squash or doing something that, playing ping pong or table tennis? Whereas like highlining sort of way out there. How do you get into it? How did you start with it?
Yeah, well, it certainly didn't start with highlining. I started with slacklining, and that kind of came almost from my climbing background a little bit. Uh, when I was first getting into slacklining, I didn't know what highlining was at all. It was kind of just a hobby that I picked up during COVID, just being bored, wanting to spend a little bit of time outside. So I set up a slack line in between a couple trees in my backyard, and it was just a fun hobby. I was just practicing walking back and forth, and I kind of liked the challenge of it. I've always been into challenging myself in different ways, and if you've ever tried stepping on a slack line, usually the first time it feels almost impossible, feels like a huge challenge. And so as soon as you start being able to stand for even a couple seconds, it's certainly has a really big factor of satisfaction. Like, it just feels really good when you start kind of overcoming that challenge. And so quickly I went from being able to standing on the other leg, then you start taking steps, and then at a certain point I could walk back and forth across this line and turn around and do a couple tricks. And it wasn't until I started slacklining with a buddy of mine in college, and he one weekend asked me if I wanted to go try highlining, and I didn't really know much about highlining. I didn't know that it was an activity that people did really, but it sounded exciting to me, so we went out to a small town in the California desert where this guy lived named Alonzo, and he was hosting a beginner's highlining clinic where it was all these really cool people who wanted to try highlining. There was some slackliners, there were some climbers, some downhill longboarders, some athletes of all kinds, just really cool people, skydivers. I was just fascinated by all these people that wanted to try this, and um, yeah, we were all just gonna go to the park, practice some of the skills that you need to get on a high line, to make sure that you can do it safely, learn about tying your knot, to keep yourself safe. And then after that first day of practice, we went out to this gorge, and we helped Alonzo set up a couple high lines, and we all kind of took our turns going out on the high line and trying to stand up. And it was a very humbling experience because I was used to being able to cross my line at the park back and forth, dozens of times without falling. I kind of expected if I'm able to stand up on this high line, then I should be able to walk across it because I have so much practice walking. But I didn't realize that it's a completely different dynamic when you're high up. The psychology changes, your body tenses
Well,
up.
yeah, I
So
can
I
imagine.
was
So is slacklining? So slacklining is obviously, is it the same as highlining, but basically at low level, low out? Like you're not gonna fall ultimately.
Yeah, I guess you could say highlining is an offshoot of slacklining. Um, yeah, slacklining, it's just putting webbing between two anchor points and walking on it. and highlining is just doing that
Right.
high up, generally with a yeah.
Got you. Got you. Understood. So at that point, then you come from. I mean, I just wanted to share the sort of video that I first saw you with, which was this one. If it's working, like I don't know where that. Where's that taking place? Can you see that?
Yeah. So that's on some it's on some BLM land in kind of near Kings Canyon and Sequoia National Park. Yeah, it's there's a lot of land in California owned by the Bureau of Land Management where you can kind of go out and camp and there's not a ton of regulations. And so yeah, we that was also with my friend Alonzo and a bunch of other friends. We went out there and we camp and then we climb and set up that line. That one was about 270 meters long, from that spire over to another natural feature. And yeah, we do that all over the place.
So how to set that up? Then you must climb up the point where you start, and then climb down and go across and climb up the other part where you affix it to. Is that the case?
Yeah, so you it always involves having someone on each side or a team of people on each side, and then
Right. Right.
somehow getting some piece of string from one team on one side to the other team on the other side. In some cases, we have to hike down or drop a string tied to a rock and hike across the gorge and then climb back up the other side. Um, in other cases, I believe in this case, we used a drone. So sometimes we use a drone when
Cool.
it's
Yeah.
so we'll have a drone uh, tied to some fishing line on a kite reel, and we'll fly it all the way across. Have someone intercept the drone, and then
Cool.
once we have it attached, like the fishing line crossing the span, then we can use that fishing line to pull over another rope, like usually paracord, and then you can pull over progressively heavier and stronger materials until you have something strong enough to pull over the actual high line rig, the webbing that we're going to actually walk on and can support our weight.
So does the obviously this is like adrenaline junkie territory. Does this is it where does the adrenaline hit come from? Is it the actual walking, or is it sort of doing the I know I've seen a couple of the videos where you sort of doing the bounces and the stunts and the flips and so on and so forth, or is that just for shits and giggle? Shit, when you're that high up.
Yeah, well, you know, I feel like at first it feels like a huge adrenaline rush, obviously, especially when you're first learning how to stand up and then you're falling off. Uh, it certainly is a surge of adrenaline, but kind of in order to progress in the sport and to get better, the main way that we get better is by developing our mindset and becoming less scared of it. And so it almost becomes a very relaxation, meditation kind of activity after a while. The whole thing is about being able to keep your breath calm, keep your mind focused. And so it really goes from being kind of an adrenaline rush sport to much more of a meditative sport. And a lot of highliners don't really consider themselves adrenaline junkies, but
I
um,
suppose you've got to be calm, ain't you? Yeah, I'm thinking about it. Like if you're a bit erratic and shaky, exactly how I would be being up being up there, you're not going to be able to stand up. You're not going to be able to walk, are you?
For sure, for sure. Yeah, it's all about figuring out different strategies to relax yourself, figure out how to trust your gear, um, and practicing falling, practicing fighting through the urge to fall. Sometimes you feel like you just want to fall and you don't like it's easy for people to uh just get really comfortable with falling and trusting their gear. And so they'll just sometimes they when people learn how to walk further, it's a matter of just kind of like trusting that you're able to do it. So there's a lot of mindset that goes into it. To answer your question about the bouncing and why we do
Mm.
that, I guess uh, the sport's been progressing very rapidly, and uh, different crews of highliners all over have been setting up longer and longer lines, and at a certain point, it becomes such a logistical challenge to set up a line that's longer than the previous one you've done and just keep pushing in that way, pushing the length or the height or the location. Sometimes that just gets too challenging. And so highliners start looking for other ways to push their skills. And one of those ways is by doing tricks. And so it's become this whole sport called freestyle highlining, where you're using a certain type of webbing that's very stretchy and at a certain length where it really maximizes the amount that you can go up and down. And you can do all sorts of crazy tricks. And that's been one area where people have really been pushing the limits in the sports, doing all sorts of flips and rolls. And it's also a super fun way to highline that doesn't necessarily require that much effort to set up compared to the big lines.
Yeah. So when you say webbing, like, is it multiple strands that you're walking on then? Is that what it's like? It's not just like one sort of continuous strand, or is it multiple?
Yeah, so well, do you mean like is it multiple pieces, multiple segments attached
Yeah,
together?
to get yeah, so it's basically together. Yeah, that's what I mean. Is it like sort of yeah, so instead of it just being one flat piece of rope or cord or whatever it may be, it's like multiple together so that it kind of behaves differently under your feet.
Um, yeah, I mean, the surface, like what we're actually walking on, we refer to webbing as it's basically just a flat rope, almost like a
Right.
that you
Yeah, yeah,
might.
yeah.
So that is like we're just walking on like one of those, but on bigger high lines, you'll attach multiple of those together in order to get the length that you need.
R-
Uh,
right, okay. Got yeah, yeah. So cool. So obviously you went down to this event wherever it was held, that where all these people that do this kind of thing, and then obviously the longboarding and the downhilling, and
mhm.
going back earlier than that, from like being a kid and a child, I know for myself, like skiing was the thing that sort of twigged my interest in. Oh, it doesn't have to be just like football or soccer or rugby is over here, but American football over there. Like it doesn't have to just be these normal sports, shall we say. That was the thing for me where I got the opportunity to go on a skiing trip, and I went skiing. I was like, holy shit, this is a sport as well. This is something outside of the sort of world of normal. That opened me up to, skiing, went to snowboarding, went to snowblading, then it went to surfing and climbing. And for you, what was that sort of similar to yourself? I know we mentioned earlier off camera that you played soccer your whole life. Um, was it always sort of like hunting for something different? Because I found that from like a creative mindset and from a creative person, it's always looking for the 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 sort of thing between the cracks, between the sort of normal things. You want to do something different and something unique quite constantly.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I grew up playing soccer for my entire life, and that really took over a big portion of my life. And was super passionate about that. And then eventually, when it came to the end of high school, I kind of made the decision that I didn't want to continue playing soccer in college. I wanted to try something new. And so I started getting really into climbing, rock climbing, did a lot of indoor bouldering, and I became very interested in that. I was doing it every day. Um, and after a while, I did start to get some little pesky like finger injuries, and so part of the reason why I started slacklining is because while I had finger injuries, it was a good.
Fill the
It,
gaps.
yeah, it kind of had like a similar mindset involved. Like it feels a little bit scary, a little bit challenging, um, and still just keeps you active and it's fun. So I think, yeah, I am kind of always looking for the next thing, like, even since starting to slackline and highline, I'm always doing different athletic endeavors, whether it's surfing or, martial arts. I've tried out a bunch of different martial arts and have a lot of fun doing that, or just, um, working out in the gym, doing calisthenics, gymnastics, um juggling. I'm always just looking for different activities that can kind of challenge my mind and body in different ways, and that's a big part of my life.
Okay. So in terms of, so when was your first experience of highlining then? Was that at this event that you went to basically? Or you've been slacklining before that and then this was the first?
Yeah, and that was in April 2023, I believe.
Wow.
So it's all been a kind of a whirlwind from the first time I started. Almost immediately when I started and I realized I was barely able to sit on the line without falling over, let alone stand up. I realized I really wanted to be able to walk across one of those lines. And so I started doing it pretty consistently. Any opportunity that came my way, I was driving out to go meet new people and go highline and learn learn skills from them. Learn the rigging was a big thing, like learning how to actually set the lines up, um, because it definitely takes someone to kind of mentor you and teach you through that, especially when it comes to trusting your life with the equipment and the way something's set up. That was a big part of the learning curve as well.
Yeah, I've always struggled that with yeah, I've never really done outdoor climbing. I've done it a couple of times, but indoor climbing I've always loved. I've always enjoyed it. I know I've got heavy legs, so bouldering's always never been sort of a thing that I'm good at because my legs tend to weigh me down. But sort of the self belays, I've never been able to trust them. But when you get to the top of the wall and you've got this fan above you and you've got to just kind of trust that this fan is not going to plummet you like 20, 30 foot to your death, and you just let go. So yeah, I
Yeah,
think the sort of trusting of the equipment is a massive thing that you've kind of just got to get your head around.
for
Um,
sure, for sure.
it's
I
different.
actually don't
Yeah.
love the self belays either. Um, I prefer having a person belaying me, but
Yeah, it just feels there's something really unnatural about it to the point where it's like, if this thing fails, that's it. It's curtains. Where at least if there's a person down there, there's somebody to blame if it all if it all goes wrong.
yeah, yeah, because you've signed, like, a liability waiver with the gym and everything, so
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah. I remember once I'd been to it was a climbing wall near me, and in fact I took my dad for his birthday because he'd never done it. He'd always wanted to go climbing. I thought, you know what, before he gets too old, I'll take him. And I'd not been to this gym before, and like one of the first things that they ask you when you're filling everything out, can you just show me how to tie a figure of eight? And it completely, my mind went blank. So I'd been climbing what, 6, 7 years at that point, and I was stood at the reception trying to sort of gain entry to this climb. It wasn't a massive climbing wall. You're talking, 30, 40 feet, but I just couldn't remember how to tie a figure of eight. So I had to go through a full hour and a half induction with this instructor teaching me how to tie a figure eight. I know I've done this like every week for the past 5 years. I just had a mind block when somebody put me on the spot and I couldn't do it. Uh, but yeah, it was funny. When you were mentioning martial arts, and it's quite, because climbing's um, it's very methodical and it's like a really mindful um, sport. Like we mentioned before we started about Alex Honnold, um, and the free solo documentary that's about him, which is probably one of the best pieces of cinema or whatever you want to call it, documentary that I've ever seen from any sport, whether it be entertainment or fantasy, sci-fi. If nobody's ever watched it, I implore you all to go and watch this, because the way, and it's always amazed me. One of the biggest things is, and it kind of highlights the mindfulness of it, of these sports that we're talking about, is he's just done something, like, spoiler alert, he does actually do the thing that he sets out to do, but at the end there's no massive celebration, there's no sort of fanfare and champagne corks popping, and it's the phone call with his wife at the top where he goes, oh yeah, I did it, yeah, I'll see you at home, yeah, all right, bye. and that is literally the celebration that he has. And I suppose it's, if you're not in that state of mind and if you're not that sort of person, then clearly it's probably not the sport for you. Um, because if you're not that, then especially in stuff like this, it could be death.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I mean, I can relate to that to some extent. I mean, obviously, when I high line, I'm not doing it free solo, so I'm not gonna die if I fall. But oftentimes, you're putting that sort of pressure on yourself when you're trying to cross a big line, and if you cross a line without calling, it's called sending the line. Same thing
Okay.
with climbing, but oftentimes people ask me why I don't really celebrate when I'm able to walk it without falling, and I think it's similar to Alex Honnold. I've listened to Alex Honnold talk about this, and he says that he spends so much time visualizing himself doing it, and he's so confident in his ability to do it that when he gets to the top, it's not really a huge surprise to him. You know, it's like
Yeah, it's
he already knew he
expected.
was gonna do it, so it's not really like a big deal. It's just he's just at the end of his journey, um, and I kind of feel that way as well when I am able to send a high line. I usually spend some time visualizing myself doing it before, and so when I get there, it's just like, oh yeah, like that was fun. That was a good time.
On to the next one.
Yeah,
I
but other
think,
people have different reactions to it. I know some people who, whether it's in climbing or highlining, when they're able to do something that they were trying to do, they do celebrate. But I've personally always been kind of a silent celebrator at the end.
but
But
I think that comes with the sort of preparation, and it relates back to the mindfulness again. Is if you prepare properly and you spend, I know, over Alex, it was like over years he spent sort of pursuing this dream, and
yeah,
and similar to yourself, you'll spend months, maybe years. There's one that the article that I read when you near the Golden Gate Bridge,
yes,
um, like you spend a long time preparing for it. It's not just something like you rock up on a Sunday and think, oh yeah, this is what I'm going to do today. It's like it's months and months and months and sometimes years of preparation. And the sort of mindset I know from personal experience, like NLP, which is neuro linguistic programming, that it plays a big part in martial arts. It plays a massive part in stuff like climbing, and seeing your route and plotting what you're going to do before you're going to do it. Um, it isn't, yeah, I suppose your sort of body knows that it can do that because you've already visualized it and already gone down that route of sort of plotting it and planning it in your head. Um, do you use sort of NLP and stuff like it's basically visualization, isn't it? But the sort of improves your muscle memory, supposedly.
yeah. I guess one example I could talk about is earlier this year, the longest line that I had sent without falling was 90 meters. And I really wanted to kind of break into the big lining scene. What a big line is usually like around like 250 to 300 meters long. And that adds a whole another element because once you're in the middle of the line, it's like nobody can nobody can come rescue you. You kind of put yourself into a situation where you have to get yourself out, especially once you're like in that halfway point.
Well,
Um,
it's like that scene out of Shrek with Donkey halfway down the bridge, halfway down the bridge.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
You get like I don't know. It can feel pretty vulnerable. And I had had one experience where I was able to cross a 260-meter line, where at some point in the middle, it was really hot out. It was like 114 degrees and Fahrenheit. That is. Eh,
Yeah, yeah. I figured that because you'd be dead if it was over
yeah,
40
yeah, yeah.
degrees centigrade.
So while in the middle of this line, I started getting cramps that were preventing me from being able to stand up. So as I was putting my leg up to stand up, it was all just kind of seizing up. And then we have these roller devices that are kind of like a backup in case you want to, instead of walking, you can kind of pull yourself
All
along the
right, yeah,
line.
yeah,
And so I set that up to start pulling myself back, but then my forearms were cramping up, like the muscles in my forearms were like waving like that, and so it was kind of this scary feeling of being stuck, and it really put into perspective like how vulnerable you can be out there when you kind of lose when something starts to go wrong. So I spent a lot of time after that preparing to do my next big line. I had this project coming up, well, where there would be a 300-meter line, and in order to prepare for that, I did a couple things. One, spent a lot of time at the park setting up a line and just walking laps basically without getting off, just laps and laps and laps, until I had walked like a kilometer or a kilometer and a half just on the line without getting off. And that gave me the kind of confidence that I had the physical and mental stamina to be able to walk 300 meters, even if it was on a high line where it's more difficult. I knew that I could physically walk that far. And then on top of that, I also did a lot of visualization before bed. I was visualizing the moment where I was reaching the end of the line and sitting down and feeling this immense relief and satisfaction. And so I was visualizing that for every night for like a week leading up to it. And that I think that really was a game changer in giving me the confidence to actually go for it and not be so nervous about getting stuck out there or just overthinking while I was on the line. That mental prep really has played a big part in my kind of progression. So
So with so how long was that line?
that line was 300 meters,
So you've
a little
gone
bit more.
so you've literally gone from like 100 meters to 300.
Yeah,
That big of a jump.
more than tripled my personal record.
Wow. You must have celebrated after that or not?
Yeah,
Or
well, what was
at least a little fist pump moment.
it was kind of a beautiful moment because Um, I got to see a video. My mom was actually there watching that
Oh,
one, which
wow.
was really, and she was taking a video from afar of when I actually sat down and but I I basically just laid down like on my stomach on the line, right at the end of the line. And when I saw the video that my mom took, it was a really interesting experience because it was exactly the way that I had visualized it in all of my preparation leading up to it. Like, the scene in the video was almost identical to what I had been imagining, and it felt like this moment where I was realizing that this kind of manifestation or visualization work can actually be real. It kind of felt almost magical in some way, but
It's weird. Yeah, I think I sort of came to the realization of that recently. And, you know, it's quite funny. Over the past sort of 7 years, I've been through, might be 8 years now, actually, sort of like a spiritual rebirth of who I was to who I am now. And, there's so much that I've read, and then there's so much online that I sort of class as it's almost like the bullshit brigade of sort of people talking about manifestation. And if you just think it, then you can do it. And it's like the reality is if you speak in simplified terms, then yes, you're probably right. If you think it, then you do it. But then you've still got to put it into action.
for sure.
If you want to be a highliner, you can't be a 40-stone slob sitting in his grandma's basement, like thinking about being a highliner and then hoping that it manifests. You're going to have to put stuff into action and get in the gym and lose weight and practice and this, that, the other. And it's making that sort of choice and that decision every single day to go towards what you're trying to think about and what you're trying to manifest. So it's that sort of the thought process without action is just a dream, whereas thought process with action is manifestation.
For sure. Well, I actually have a note on that because, I didn't mention this part, but this line that I was able to cross, it actually took me 2 attempts. So, the first attempt, I really kinda hyped myself up, and I went into it with this expectation that I was going to be able to do it because I had done all this physical preparation and all this visualization, and I was like, I can do this. I can do this. And I got across 90% of the line. And I started thinking about, wow, I'm so close to the finish line. I'm so close to the end. I only have a little bit left to go. And I lost focus, and without even realizing it, I just slipped off the line and fell in they call it the heartbreak zone, which is like less than
Right at the
10.
end.
And that was a weird thing for me because I had so much confidence up until that point. And it was kind of like, well, this isn't how it went in my visualization. And I was kind of like, wow, like I thought, like up until like a second ago, I thought this manifestation thing was kind of working. Like I was and I was kind of frustrated um but I let it go and I was kind of like it wasn't a huge deal. I still had fun, but then when I was going home that night, I was like, well, maybe the way I visualized it, like maybe it was in a later time when I would actually succeed. And so I was like, well, what if I just go back tomorrow and try again? Maybe like that would be like maybe that's when I'm supposed to
Yeah.
actually get the send. And so I decided to drive. I had driven back like 2 hours away, and I decided to drive back the next day and try again. And,
Persistence,
and
yeah. There's
that's when I got the send.
it's one of the, like there's a story. I think it's an ancient Chinese sort of proverb about or it might be a true story. I can't remember, but it's about a man with a silver mine, and he gets left this silver mine by his granddad in his will, and basically spends 2 years digging for silver, and comes up with little bits here and there, and he ends up spending all of his life savings on trying to find this silver on this land that he's been left, and he's got 2 weeks worth of money left to do it, and he gets an offer. Basically, all the money that he's currently spent trying to find this silver, he gets an offer off this person. I'll buy it off. I'll buy you the land and the rights off you for this amount of money. So basically, you come out of this even. And the guy ends up agreeing, selling the land. And 2 days later, the man that bought the land finds one of the biggest silver veins, silver deposits in like world history. And it's just like if you'd just carried on for that extra little bit, your dreams would have all come true. And I think like Napoleon Hill, who's written one of the probably, I think one of the most influential books for modern culture, which is The Think and Grow Rich. It's like a study on he sort of followed around Andrew Carnegie, who's one of the biggest steel magnates that there's ever been, and all these sort of millionaires and billionaires at the time. He came up with like sort of 12 rules to be successful within business and think and grow rich, basically. And one of them was persistence, like that sort of. And I teach my daughter that now in terms of if you don't stop, then technically you can never fail. If you never give up, then you never fail, regardless. Even if you get knocked down 6, 7, the high line that you did, if you'd have given up after that first one that you failed at, then that would be marked down as a fail. But the fact that you kept on doing it and then you ended up succeeding on the second trial, it's ultimately a win. It's a journey of a win rather than sort of separating it into wins and fails and left, right, and center. So yeah, it's one of the biggest virtues, I think. And I think sport teaches you that. Whichever sport it is, I play hockey, and I love the sort of last quarter of a game, because that's when you see people that give up. And if you're winning, that's when like they maybe switch off and think, oh yeah, we've got this, it's in the bag, and then they end up losing or drawing. Or or you get if you are losing, that's when you knuckle down and think, right, now we've got to go on and we've got to win this, and you sort of grab the game by the scruff of the neck. And that sort of never say die attitude is yeah, it's very undervalued, I think.
I completely agree. I think persistence has been key in, like, since that 300-meter line in each of my biggest highline accomplishments since then, it hasn't been just something that I achieve on the first try. It's always taken multiple tries and resetting and figuring out what went wrong and making adjustments. And so I think it's persistence and trying again, and also really trying to figure out what went wrong in initial attempts, you know?
Yeah, yeah. It's that sort of, it's the same, goes back to that sort of mindfulness. And um, what's his name? Alan Watts says it perfectly. He did a there's a little speech on sort of mindfulness and making sure that, and I do it every now and again, probably every 2-3 months. I'll spend like a morning, which is anywhere between 6 and 7 a.m. It's sort of everything becomes a conscious decision. So that's all the way down to your breathing. So you've discovered that you wake up and you become sort of conscious again, and it's like you make a conscious decision. I'm now going to open my eyes, and your eyes up. I'm now going to place my hands either side of my body and push up off the bed to make myself sit. And it's uh, I try it as far as I can up until the point where you're brushing your teeth, you go downstairs, you make breakfast, but everything, I'm going to breathe in, I'm now going to breathe out, and everything becomes sort of a real conscious decision. Um, and I think with it's a bit difficult in sports like that are fast moving, like hockey or soccer or anything along those lines. But when it becomes methodical, like climbing, highlining, um, things like that, it can only help sort of practices like that, to the point where, well, it'll slow your heart rate down for a start, which is probably a good thing considering you're hundreds of meters up in the air, and you're 150 meters back or 150 meters forward, and I can imagine your heart's going or wanting to race. So with the brotherhood, like, or with the community around it, is it very much sort of a community sport, or do you feel alone when you're out there?
Well, I would say both. It's very much a community sport, at least the way that at least my experience with it. And I would say by far most people, uh, they have that same communal experience. I mean, it doesn't take a village, but it takes a small community and a certainly a crew and a team to get most of these projects done. Um, you can do it by yourself. There's people who do that, but it's very challenging, and I think the community is one of the best parts of it. I think the
Hmm.
community is actually what really hooked me. Like I mentioned, when I went out to the that beginner highline clinic, that first time that I ever highlined, um, all the people that I met, it was so inspiring. I mean, I had had great friends before that, but I mean, I hate to say this, but, like, these people were more interesting, it was more like people that were more inspiring to me, rather than just, like, your peers in school or just, like, who's in your immediate surroundings.
Yeah, I think
Um,
you do
um
grow. I know where you're coming from in terms of, it sounds bad, but I think you get to a certain age, and I probably did that, like I said, about 7 years ago, 7 or 8 years ago, where and it's so true. There's all the sayings of it's hard to soar like an eagle when you're surrounded by turkeys, and then in terms of there's one about trees as well. I can't quite remember, but I've taught my daughter about. Um, a tree will only grow as tall as the one it's planted next to, and so on and so forth. And I think you get to a certain age where it's not sort of saying I don't want to be friends with you anymore. It's just you kind of become a different person and you outgrow it and you get different interests, and life takes you in different sort of paths and patterns, and you kind of just, yeah, it's the way a river flows. You just end up at a different sort of estuary rather than they might be a little bit further upstream. Um, so yeah, I get I'm on board with that one.
And it's yeah, and it's just the exposure to novelty as well. Like, I still am great friends with I have so many great friends from university and from my hometown in San Francisco, and I love going back and hanging out with all those people. But I think it was also very inspiring to have this random niche sport lead me to meet all these other people who are um, they all have their own hobbies and we can all kind of share hobbies. That's a big thing about the highlining community is you just all kind of share your skills and hobbies. And one thing about highlining is there's a lot of time when someone else is on the line having their kind of experience where they're alone on the line, and then the rest of the people who help set up the line are there and just kind of get to hang out. And so
Yeah, I
they
never
get into
thought about
all
that
these
actually.
they get into all these activities where um a lot of them do all of these kind of flow arts where they're spinning fire um or juggling, and basically all highliners that I know learn how to juggle at some point, which and then they're doing acro yoga and yeah, which is like partner yoga, or handstands, or just everyone kind of teaches each other their own little niche skills. And I mean, at the end of the day, everyone there likes challenging themselves and being in mindsets where they're connecting their brain with their body. And um, I think that's one thing I love about the community is just how much they teach each other.
Yeah, every day's a school day. That's
For sure.
it's also like so touching on that and touching on obviously other talents, and I know we've spoke about highlighting, which is fair. And honestly, anybody listening to this, go and check out Aiden's Instagram because yeah, only if you've got a spare sort of hour or so. Because once you start scrolling on all the highlighting videos, you get kind of hooked, or I did anyway. Um, but touching on sort of the other elements and what obviously you mentioned you went to university. What is it that you did at university, or what
I
did you
studied
study?
landscape architecture.
Wow.
Um, so yeah, I definitely have another side of me that's passionate for design, and I guess landscape architecture is cool because it really combines my interest in nature with my interest in design.
Mm.
And also one of my mottos for life is I want to leave the world a better place. And so that's one reason why I always enjoyed landscape architecture is if you complete a project that you think is a great project, you kind of feel as though you're leaving the world a better place.
Yeah. I like that there's a really good saying where it's like great leaders or great men plant seeds of trees under the shade of which they know they'll never sit. And it's like that sort of ethos of however big a fingerprint that you leave on the planet, um, make sure it's a positive one, make sure it's a good one, uh, or at least a beautiful one. It might not even have to function, but at least it's something where not a bad one, not a negative one, which there's plenty of grubby, dirty, horrible political paws that are leaving dirty, horrible, horrible fingerprints on the planet at the minute. So is that through, I'm presuming, and I know the school system in the States is slightly different, but is it through school and through college, university, where you develop sort of, because like we haven't mentioned about your artwork, and it's another, you just seem multifaceted and multi-talented, Aiden. Like it's kind of unfair that you're able to be this good at this many things. Um, um, but when did you? I mean, I know from my perspective, art's always been just sort of a natural kind of expression for me. I've got a pad that I sort of use throughout the day when I'm making notes and show notes and compiling letters to guests and so on and so forth. And it's full of like just random doodles and corners and where my pen sort of kind of just takes over whilst I'm doing something else completely differently. Is that's when I first discovered that sort of creative artwork or whatever it may be might be in my sort of talent pool, because that was what I did at school when I was bored with sort of a physics lesson being taught by yeah, Mr. Quinn. Sorry, Mr. Quinn. Like, he was a friend of my dad's. Like, when I was bored in physics, that would be the sort of thing that I'd go to, is just doodling in the back of my workbook. Is that, I can imagine that's sort of similar to yourself.
Well, have I definitely have spent a lot of time, not paying attention in class and doodling instead. But, I really got into artwork mostly from my mom, who's an artist, and just growing up, we just always had kinda art supplies around the house, and we were always just doing little art projects, painting and drawing, and so I would definitely say my family is just a pretty creative family, and so I'm super grateful for that exposure at an early age. But since then, it's like I don't know. I've never really thought about being like a professional artist or anything. It's always just been kind of like you talked about, just kind of an expression. Sometimes you're doodling, and then maybe it'll turn into something more than that, and other times I do like to go to a drawing class occasionally. I go to a drawing class with my mom. That's occasionally to paint live nude models, and that's a great experience. And then through landscape architecture, part of the reason I chose that is because there's a lot of opportunities for drawing and model making, and
Hmm.
it's a very creative major. You spend a lot of time making making pretty pictures that people will, want their garden to look like that, or someone will want a public park to look like.
Yeah, I
Very
think, I mean, I come before sort of podcasting and this venture. Construction was my sort of world for 17 years. It's what I did, and it's always, I I've never worked for a house builder that has built, in essence, what I call box homes. They're just sort of 200 of the exact same home, and
Mhm.
once you've built one, you can build the next one, and on they go. And it's like a conveyor belt and a supply chain of just boring, bog standard houses. And I've always been interested in modern building methods, and I know in the States a lot of stuff is timber frame, but over here it was always bricks and mortar and what we call traditional build. And timber frame is kind of like a new modern method of construction, but I've always enjoyed it. But I think, I don't. I mean, I live in it's a Victorian terraced house, which is, it's two rooms upstairs, two rooms downstairs, and it's nice, and it's characterful, and I've kind of made it my own, in my own unique, wacky way. I've like kind of put faux rock on the walls and so on and so forth, just going crazy with the creative ideas. Made myself a sunken meditation room in the front, and I love it. And I've kind of made it my own. And I think I've always been fascinated with why a house is square. I don't understand the squareness of houses, because, when the Anglo, back in history, in the medieval times, the roundhouse was the sort of center of the village. That's where everybody and everything was round and circular, and it becomes easier to build a pitched roof, and like teepees, in back when sort of the Native Americans were roaming the plains. Teepees, they're all round, they're all pointed. It all kind of just made more sense. Um, and I've always had sort of the vision, um, of Adobe construction, which is sort of the earth bag stuff, where you can make domes and round buildings. Um, but I've never quite I've always wanted to sort of break the mold, and not just build boring square boxes that people live in. I wanted to sort of make round and flowing pieces of sort of architecture, and I've never really had the opportunity, unless it comes to building my own in future.
Yeah, a friend was just telling me about yeah, one of my highlining buddies, he was telling me about this couple. They're actually an older highlining couple. They're like I think the lady is like 65 years old or something.
Wow.
Don't quote me on that if she ever watches this, but, uh but, yeah, he was showing me a picture of his house in Nevada that they visited, and it's it was a semicircular house all made of adobe construction with, like, super large, timber beams going across the top of it. It was kinda almost seemed like it was built into the earth, but the entire, flat wall of or the flat side of the semicircle was all just like glass windows. So it was this like semicircular house that was kind of built into the landscape. And I think that it kind of reminded me of what you were talking about, but it seemed like a dream house of mine when he was showing me the picture. It was just
It's, it's just, and I think it comes to that, and I think there's loads of creative people out there. Though I've always done it with the way I dress. I've always done it with the way I look. I've always done it with um, kind of. I've always made the unpopular choice, if that makes sense. Uh, I remember when the first Night Cortezes came out, uh, and I ended up getting like the craziest pair of Night Cortezes that were just random colors in comparison to everybody else's. Everybody else had the white with the red Nike tick, and I had like people like they were like all blue on one side, then all white, like beige on another, and then yellow down the middle, and it was just. I think they're cool. I it's like it's different. If I don't want to sort of have something that everybody else has the same, I don't want to conform. I want to sort of push against the grain and be something different and be something alternative because that's where I see the fun. That's where the sort of there's no fun to me. It becomes boring if everybody becomes the same. So if like following the trends of, I remember it was like in the early 90s where all like men used to have to have Calvin Klein boxer shorts. And it was like, yeah, I don't want Calvin. Everybody's got them. They're boring. I don't want Calvin Klein boxer shorts. I want something else. I want something different. There's something unique. And I think that sort of bled very much into my life of sort of sports as well. Is like, I want to chase something that's different, chase something that's unique. And I don't think I'm ever going to get up to highlining, to be honest, Aiden. It's not going to be on my bucket list. And it's not the fact that I'm afraid of heights. It's just, yeah, I don't think I've got the mental concentration to stay there for that long.
yeah, well, I mean, it's certainly not everybody's cup of tea, but I think the fun thing is now I've tried to do this quite a bit with some of my friends who aren't into slacklining, aren't into balancing, um, but I can still kind of set up an experience for them to get out on the line, and I can just kind of roll them out on a kootenai, it's called, and just get them just rolled out to the middle of the line so they can just experience that space. And oftentimes people really enjoy that. Even they don't really have to take control of the situation. It's almost just like they get to go experience that exposure of being high up. It's different than standing on the edge of a cliff. There's something about being kind of alone in space with air on all sides of you. It's a unique experience. Um, but people quite enjoy it. Like you feel alone out there. It's a good place to kind of sit and meditate, just suspended, looking at a nice view. So I think I could probably convince you to do that. Maybe not try to learn how to stand up, but I think you would enjoy a good little
Possibly,
meditation
definitely
out
not
there.
in the UK at the moment because the weather is absolutely atrocious. You've got the weather
Yeah.
for it over there, 100%. It's literally pissing down 10 months out of 12 over here. So, as long as it's a fine day and nice weather, then we're generally good. I'd probably give it a go. It took me an age when I was traveling in Africa and we did Livingston over Victoria Falls and we did the bungee jump. I've mentioned it. So,
Mhm.
Erica, who's a friend of mine, has a ranch over in California. She's a psychotherapist and does psychedelic therapy and stuff over there. Yeah, she reminded me of the bungee jump over Victoria Falls, and I had to I had to tell the guy to push me. I couldn't jump. My legs just wouldn't let me go, but I really wanted to do it. It was like, will you just kick me? Just push me off. But once you've done it, it's an amazing feeling. Um, But yeah, my legs just wouldn't move, so I doubt I'd be able to. You could wheel me out there, but I doubt I'd be able to move.
It's good instincts though. Like you're I think that is one thing that's really interesting, especially like beginning to highline is your instincts, kind of the same instinct that was telling you not to jump.
Yeah.
You're having that total feeling. Like first of all, you don't when you're first trying it, you don't want to leave the edge. And then you take that step to leave the edge, and then you like don't want to take your hands off the line, and then you don't want to stand up. You have this instinct that's it's really strong primal instinct of like you are putting yourself in danger. Stop doing that.
Yeah, don't do this. This is how people die.
Get down from there.
Yeah. I think
But
it is that sort of battle. One of my friends, Lee, I mean, I used to. I haven't done for the past probably 5 months, but ice baths every morning, and he swears by him now. And I must admit, I do. I think it was about 4 or 5 months ago where I lost the morning mental battle of like, this is gonna suck. I don't want to do it. It's crap. It feels horrible, but then I know after it, I feel amazing for the rest of the day, and it's one of the best feelings going. Especially when you get out and you put your clothes on, it's so good. But you'd think, and we were talking about it because we had like a 2 hour journey up to a hockey game at weekend. We were talking about it. That sort of mental battle, you would think it gets easier because you know what's coming. And it just doesn't. If anything, it gets harder because you actually know what's coming, and it's horrible to sort of stand at the side of the ice bath and you think, oh, I've ran this. I've gone to all the effort of preparing it. I know I'm going to feel really good after it, and I just don't want to get in, and I don't want to do it. And it's like you could be at the side of the bath for about 15, 20 minutes arguing with yourself, not wanting to get in. And I lost it one morning. I lost the argument, hold my hands up, and I haven't resumed it. With relating that back to what you do you still have them sort of battles when you start out on the highline, or does it become easier?
um I would say I definitely do. I've gotten pretty comfortable with walking high lines. I've kind of gotten over that a little bit. Sometimes there still is a little bit of resistance when you're first like standing up and going out there. Um, but where I've really been struggling right now is with freestyle and trying to land more difficult tricks when I'm bouncing on the line. Um, I find it I have a I can like tell myself to commit to a certain trick, and then sometimes my body just won't let me do it. And I've been kind of struggling with that. I think part of it is I've been in this mode where I've been really focused on walking lines without falling, and so I've been in kind of this mode of like don't let yourself fall, and I just never want to fall. I've been not letting myself fall at all. And part of what goes into freestyling is you have to really commit and push yourself to the limits to the point where you might fall and have to get caught by your leash. And it's been hard for me to get back in that mindset where I'm like comfortable just losing control. Um, so I've been working on that, trying to become a little bit more, yeah, a little bit more open to whipping, as they call it.
Whipping. Oh yeah, no. You've now lost me. So we like I just want to touch back on your artwork because I think it needs more attention. It deserves more attention.
Okay.
Because you mentioned obviously your mum being your massive influence in terms of your creativity when it comes to your art, and I think that it is sort of the way that you framed it kind of understates the beauty of that relationship of sort of creativity within a family. And I always encourage my own daughter to be expressive and creative, and she is very sort of out there with what she wants to. She likes shoeboxes. She likes decorating shoeboxes, which is sort of her thing, and she likes to give them to give them to her cousins and people. And I kind of love it. And she leaves me sort of random notes every now and again. So I don't know whether you can see that, but that one's good luck, Daddy. So like before like a podcast episode, I'd just come in and there'll be a post-it on my desktop screen with like drawings. This one's got like love hearts and smiley faces and everything on. And so that sort of relationship, when obviously you go to these drawing classes and stuff, and I've obviously looked at your artwork, and your ink drawings are really, really unique. I've not seen much. I don't think I've ever seen much similar to them. Um, does it have sort of an influence on where your mind goes to what to draw? That really, the relationship that you have with your mum.
Hmm, that's an interesting question. I feel like, uh, I think those ink drawings in particular, it was kinda different than a lot of artwork that I usually do. I feel like generally I'm drawing either just from my head or I'm drawing something that I'm seeing in person. But those ink drawings in particular, I was doing this online challenge called Inktober, where you draw,
Okay.
there's a prompt for every day of October, and lots of artists do it. But I took on that challenge 1 year, and I was basically spending like maybe like 3 hours drawing each day. Uh, and there would be a prompt, and I would honestly sometimes spend like an hour just coming up with what I was going to draw for that prompt, just like doing a bunch of like little sketches, and I would start a drawing and throw it away. But I really committed to posting those each day, and I was pretty like hard on myself about it. I don't know why. I for some reason I really wanted them to all kinda turn out well in a series, and they weren't all my favorite, but I think as a 30-piece series, I was pretty proud of it at the end.
Yeah, I
Um
mean, I would be. You don't mind me sharing them, do you? Because I want to
No, no,
show
not at all.
my favorite one, and my favorite one is not this one. I mean, that one's a good one. I do like Demon or slash S, but this one's my favorite one. Plump.
I can't see it on my
Oh,
end,
can you
but
not see it? So Plump is the gorilla.
yeah, that's
Sat down, sat down, and I think it's such a good sort of word for a gorilla is plump. But they are absolutely amazing. They're so good. Um,
thank you. I mean, so as you can imagine, like, the prompt for that day was plump, and I was
yeah.
thinking about, like, all these different things that I could draw, and I ended up deciding on a plump gorilla, and I believe he's holding like a fruit, right?
Yes, it is. Yeah.
Yeah, so I don't know, I was first thinking about just drawing a fruit, and then I was thinking about just drawing some kind of fat animal, and then I ended up going for a plump gorilla holding a plump peach or apple or
I think
something.
they're so good, and I think like I've spoken about this before, and I can't remember. It might have been with Seb. So Seb, and it's quite funny how it links in. Seb is a friend of mine. He's a pro surfer. Very similar sort of probably mindset. He's an artist as well, and I think it was probably when I was in year 10, which would have been 15, there or thereabouts, where I kind of discovered my love for artists rather than just enjoying creating and drawing and doing graffiti or doodles or whatever it is. You kind of, at that age, I think you get to some level of intellect where you kind of figure out, oh, this art, I like the drawings of this person and I like the artwork of this person. So you do usuals, which is like Georgia O'Keeffe. Henry
Yeah,
Moore was the sculpture that I studied that I really enjoyed his stuff. Um, but Boris Vallejo was one of the best, and he kind of did all the fantasy. So what he used to do, it was really good. So there was a book, and it was the only book that nobody else was interested in. I was the only one in the class that was interested in this book by Boris Vallejo, and it kind of showed you how they did the old animation movies, like the original Lord of the Rings animation movie, where they kind of filmed the people doing it and then overlaid sort of the cartoon element on top of it. Um, he kind of did the same process of taking the pictures of these people in these poses and then created them in like a fantasy world. So he
right.
might have a guy in a a pair of shorts on a chair holding a broom handle above his head, whereas he will then transform that into a warrior in armor holding a sword above his head on a rock. And it kind of gave you the sort of chronological time frame of his process. And I remember reading that. It was the first sort of art book that I read cover to cover. And it kind of got me hooked on the sort of mindset of what artists kind of go through and where their inspiration comes from. And obviously with Seb, he's had a lot of demons, and he's had a crazy upbringing in comparison to like other people, like amazing, but not the normal, if that makes sense.
Mm.
And a lot of his artwork, which is out there, kind of comes from that his sort of life experiences. Where would you say your artwork comes? I know you mentioned your mum, and she's sort of influenced you getting into the creative, but where would you say your influences in your style and your artwork come from?
Hmm.
Big question, that one.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I think it can depend. I think, um, a lot of it just comes with it really depends on, like, the style of drawing. Like, I think, for example, some of those pen and ink drawings, some of them came from definitely, like, internal places of things that I was thinking about or processing. Like, I think, the some of those ink drawings, like demons or chains, or, I think there's one called Angel. Like, those came from more, like, personal relationships, things I was going through at the time, kind of expressing emotions through symbols. Um, but then I find, on the other hand, a lot of the like, when I paint or draw the models at the live drawing classes, I feel like it's more of me trying to wrap my head around beauty and, like, trying to, like, capture the beauty of the world or what I'm seeing. And, like, sometimes you just notice little details, um, maybe the way one, like, muscle is flexed, and it catches your eye, and it's interesting, and you just really wanna capture the beauty that exists in reality and put it onto paper. Um, so I feel like it really depends, but I think that the pen and ink drawings really, like, pushed me into more of a deeper place to especially come up with concepts, and even just having this random word as, like, an initial framework, but then trying to somehow create something meaningful with that seemingly random word.
Yeah, I think that it's all. I've done it with sort of therapists and life coaches, and Kathleen, who's been um she was the second guest, I think, on the podcast. She's been my life coach for the past 5 years. So it was a bit, yeah, I was in a vulnerable place when she came on, because she knows all my deepest, darkest secrets. And I was like, prep talk beforehand, don't give anything away, Kathleen. Um, and and I've always sort of, when I explain, go through things with her and explain stuff, I always find it easy to create sort of a simile or a metaphor, or, you know, I feel like I'm stood on a chair, or I'm leaning back on a chair, and you're at that balance point, and I don't know whether I'm going to tip and it's like creating that sort of visual um, simile or metaphor helps me kind of explain what's going on internally. Um, so like, I think that's why when I looked through your artwork and I saw the word plump, and the reason why it kind of struck me more than the rest of them, because like demons, which was another one, was I kind of, I've felt that and seen that myself, where you kind of feel enveloped by this
Mm,
oppressive negative energy. But
mm,
but I got to see, I think with that plump one, I got to kind of see into the artist's mind, i.e. you. I got to see into your head, rather than, oh, I feel that, because I wouldn't have gone with gorilla. And it was like, I think that's why it kind of stood out to me. But I think that helped, that's a big thing with creative people, is that sort of visualization element. When somebody says something, or you see something within your daily life, and you can liken it to something else. I quite often I love people watching. People watching is one of my favorite pastimes. Like when I'm waiting for something and I can just watch people. Like last night, I don't drink alcohol, but last night I went out with some of the hockey lads, and after the game, and I watched just watching people in the bar, and it's quite funny. I just enjoy it. I enjoy seeing other people's behaviors and wondering what they're kind of like as a person, and just taking it from that, say, a sort of 2-minute window that I've seen them, that this is the sort of life that they lead, and this is how they may be a product of a single parent family, and this is they're really sharp with a partner, and the sort of prim and proper, and they have like a chihuahua at home, and kind of I really enjoy that sort of element, and I've never really met or sat with anybody that enjoys it as much as I do, as much as I do. But people are amazing.
I do that. Well, I like to people watch also, but it's when you said you kind of started almost imagining intricacies of their life when you're looking at their behavior. It reminded me of actually when I'm drawing the models at this drawing class. I find it interesting because oftentimes when I'm drawing them, and I guess this goes back to your question before about maybe what I think about when I'm drawing, or oftentimes when I'm drawing them, I am creating these intricate stories of like what's going on in their head, and I'm drawing their face, and I'm thinking about what this little bit of tension in their cheekbone might mean for what's going on at home, or I look in their eyes and see this like deep emotion, and I could be making it all up, but it really helps the artistic process to kind of come up with this story and feed it into the strokes of your pen.
Yeah,
Um,
100%. I think that sort of and this it kind of brings on onto a subject I've kind of wanted to speak to people about it with AI, and I use ChatGPT daily. I think I use it for sort of audio journaling, so I can just do my journal instead of having to sit down and write it out, and sort of take that. I can do it whilst I'm speaking and whilst I'm doing something else. So if I'm doing the school run and taking my daughter to school, I can then be in the car journaling technically whilst driving at the same time.
Good idea.
Um, and one of the big questions at the minute, and the sort of whole graphic design industry, which is probably holding their breath at the minute in sort of in terms of the way AI is progressing. I saw a comparison video the other day. I'm sure I could probably find it with. It was a video created in I think 2023 of Will Smith eating pasta, and now it's a video of in 2025 of Will Smith eating pasta created by AI. Both of them, like the 2025, you wouldn't tell the difference between that one and real life.
Yeah.
Not a chance. Whereas
Yep.
in 2023, it's like his face is all morphing and the pasta's like round his ear, and it's all like random. And I think it is cool and it is amazing. But, and then you get the legitimate worry of, people like artists and graphic designers and whoever it may be, worrying that this thing could replace if you can get a piece of an AI software that can recreate something like the Mona Lisa within minutes. But I think with artwork, it's more than pen, paper, paint, parchment, canvas, whatever it may be. It's the feeling of it, and I think there is pieces of artwork. I went to the Dali Museum in Barcelona when I was 16, 17, and there's no denying he was a crazy motherfucker. He was off his head. He was Salvador Dali. Like,
Yeah.
it's just absolutely bonkers. But when you walk around the museum and you see his artwork, you get the feeling of pure and utter, unadulterated, like chaotic creativity.
Mhm.
Um, AI would never, ever, ever be able to recreate that. Ever. Not in my opinion. I don't think it could. What's your view on it? Do you think similarly?
Well, I think similarly, I think, a big thing that what I've noticed some successful artists who post their work on social media, it seems like a large reason why they are successful is because they show their process. And I think that's something that's super underrated. I think the process for the average person watching is almost more interesting than the final result. Uh, and I've been seeing some really creative process videos, and the process is something that AI can't really do. There's not really any process when AI generates an image. It's just a bunch of computer code that we couldn't understand. So I think, yeah, I think that's something that artists who are worried about AI really need to do is show their process, show everything that goes into it, show the emotion that goes into it, talk about the story behind it. Um, I think it's unfortunate that uh, I don't know, sometimes that's not always recorded, and then it's just one piece of art that an artist made versus another that AI made, and it's almost indistinguishable. But I think with anything that we do these days, I think it's almost important to show the humanity that goes into it.
Yeah, I think you've hit. I think you've hit on a point that's bigger than just the art world as well. Especially on social media now, when you get, I don't know whether it probably is, but people like Andrew Tate that um, are polarizing figures, and they sort of, you're a loser if you haven't got sort of six cars and four women and millions of dollars, and you're trading forex and you're buying gold and you Bitcoin this and then you've got sort of people, women like. Uh, it's going to pain me. I get a shiver when I say the word, but like the Kardashians that are sort of, billions of pounds of makeup empires, and it's always kind of what social media does, and even like sort of the lesser um, influencers. I'd used air quotes there just for the people that are listening because I hate that word, but even for the lesser ones, it's always like that finished product. It's always like, oh yeah, I've got millions of pounds in the bank and I'm 23 and I'm living in Dubai and I pay no tax and I drive a McLaren, and there's no sort of emphasis on, yeah, but what did you do to get there? What was your journey? Did you is it true? Is it a true journey? Is it, we all know Kim Kardashian's journey, which isn't sort of quite advertised as it should be, in my opinion. But then, like, Andrew Tate's journey, which was all sort of Big Brother and rejection, and it, you know, if you look at it as a whole, you can understand why he is the way he is now, in my opinion. Um, and I think, taking away from, there's a lot to be said in terms of the journey. It's not about the destination; it's all about the journey, and that is what people don't see. And it links back to sort of what we were saying about manifestation quite at the beginning, and is the fact that just sitting and seeing the finished product, whether that be in your mind's eye or whatever, doesn't it's not going to do anything. It's got to be with action, and you've got to see the journey, and you've got to see the pathway. Um, so yeah, I think you've touched on a, a a bigger problem within society of seeing sort of them building blocks that make people who they are.
Yeah, I've been pretty fascinated with kind of that idea of the journey lately. I've been really trying to learn better storytelling, especially like as I've been making videos. I feel like I don't know. There's definitely some videos in the past that I've made where it's more just like a highlight reel, just showing like the really cool shots. But um, I've gotten an overwhelming amount of people who are really interested in. I mean, I guess the journey of highlining, for example, could be the process of setting it up. Like, so many
Yeah,
comments asking me, "Well, how did you set that up? Like, I wanna see a video of you setting it up." And sometimes it's ha I really need to make the video of that because at sometimes it's not really what I'm focused on. It's like when I'm setting it up, I'm not really, like, filming everything because 'cause I've got my hands full, but, I do think that is a video that I wanna make and just something that I wanna focus on in general as I continue to make videos, just tell tell stories and explain the journey. I tried to do that in a video that I recently made of my time in Japan,
I
where I
was going to
went.
touch on that, yeah, because I know I messaged you about it because it's always been very much high on my bucket list. And I think the reason why I think Japan's always been high on my bucket list is because I think the world now could learn a lot from Japanese culture,
100%.
especially the ritualistic element of everything that they do. Um, something as simple as everybody's seen it on movies and stuff. The Last Samurai with Tom Cruise, which is one of my like sort of guilty pleasures. Like having tea in Japan is not just sitting down with a cup and going through a drive-through and sort of putting it in your cup holder in your car and off you go. It's a full sort of ritual from start to finish, and it's respected and um, done meticulously. And I think that's a lot of things. In terms of writing, when they write um, whatever document it may be, it's done with purpose. Um, and I was speaking to a potential upcoming guest who's vegan, and I'm not vegan. I'm a meat eater. I'm a big advocate of sort of protein and meat eating and things, but I do
As well.
understand. Yeah, I do understand the point that vegans try to make, and the whole point is the lack of symbiosis with and respect and ritual within sort of our food industry. Whereas in Japan, I know that's different. I watched a documentary where it was about blue zones across the world, which are like the highest centurions per capita. And Okinawa was one of the blue zones, and the way that they treat sort of food as a community thing rather than just going to the supermarket on a Friday or a weekend. It's sort of a community element of sort of growing food and creating food and cooking food, and they cook as like sort of a community rather than just for each other and everybody's out for themselves. So yeah, so I wax lyrical about it. I think it's amazing. You've actually been there. What was that sort of? What did you experience?
Yeah, well, I think some of those things that you touched on, yeah, super accurate. I think with the thing about the centenarians, I believe while I was in Japan, this statistic came out that I could be wrong on this statistic, but I think it's 100,000 people over the age of 100 in
Wow.
Japan now,
Well,
which is
I'm gonna
now the most in the
search
world.
that up.
Maybe I could be wrong. I'm pretty
We'll say,
sure that's
I don't want you to be, how many people? Age of one. Wow. Yeah. 99,763.
yeah.
That's crazy.
So that was something that I saw while I was over in Japan, and so, I was there with my
Wow.
family, and we spent a lot of time reflecting on why that could be, because people all have their theories about, like, just what it is, I don't know, but what I think is there's so many different aspects of their culture that could contribute in some way to that, I think, um
That's fucking crazy.
right?
It says here, so the number of centenarians has grown dramatically from, so in 1963, which is, you know, not that long ago, 55 years ago, it was only 153. And now you're over nearly 100,000. That's absolutely crazy.
So, probably a mix of some modern medicine with some of their cultural practices, and it's
Yeah.
skyrocketed, huh?
Well, yeah, if you want to live to 100, Japan's probably the best place, the best place to go.
So, I mean, some of the things that we noticed were, I mean, you spend a lot of time sitting on the floor and getting up from the floor. Um, I think you retain a lot of mobility by eating every meal sitting in crisscross applesauce on the floor. Um, it was so funny being in some of these restaurants where they just have a low table and you go in and you sit on the floor, and you would see some American tourists in there just absolutely struggling to, like, because if you don't practice sitting on the floor, like, after 10 minutes, you could tell their knees are hurting, their back is hurting, they're changing into different positions, and they looked all uncomfortable and asking to move to a different table. Um, so that was one thing that we noticed, and I think that has an effect. Another thing that is very common practice in Japan is they don't, like, walk and eat at the same time. Like, if you get some food on the street, you're supposed to stand there and save they're big on, like, savoring your food and taking time to eat slowly and processing the flavors. Like, uh, one lady at one of the restaurants, she scolded us for using too much soy sauce, and she, like, took the soy sauce away from us. She was like, "You need to, she was like, "You need to, like, savor it and, like, enjoy the flavors." I think people in the Western world are so accustomed to just dousing stuff in salt and just, just everything is just covered in salt and sugar.
Yeah.
And where there everything's a lot more plain and you experience it for the actual flavor. Um, there were so many, like, little things like that. Just I mean, everything's very walking focused. Um, it's also very sanitary. I don't know if that has anything to do with people living longer, but I could imagine it does. Like, you take off shoes everywhere to get before you go inside. There's no trash anywhere. There's also no trash cans anywhere, which I thought was interesting. You would think if you had no trash cans,
Yeah,
then
yeah.
we're trash on the street. But the culture there is to, if you have some sort of trash, you have to, like, you're taking it with you. Like, you're not just like, you're not gonna throw it on the street, you're not gonna throw it in a trash can.
Well, I think that it comes. I think, or my deduction is the fact that that comes from. I've always viewed Japanese culture as a culture of respect. You know, you see it. You see it throughout cinema and whatever. You know, I've got. In fact, I've got the Art of War and the Book of Five Rings actually next to me, which are two of my
I've heard
favorite books, and that sort of it's almost like a culture built on respect. You know, even if you were the samurai, if you're fighting a samurai, you're going to kill your aim is to kill the other person. There would still be an immense amount of respect for one another, even though you were going to kill. You setting out to kill somebody, and I think that that has disappeared. I mean, I know I spoke about it the other day in this country, especially because when I moved over to the States when I was 20, 19, nine, yeah, 19, 20, and I was surprised because I lived in a place which people generally called a bit rough and a bit dodgy, but it was very much similar to what I remember growing up in the 90s being in England, which is people left the doors unlocked when they went to work. They didn't have to lock the doors. They could go to the supermarket and leave the door of the car open and come back and it'd still be there and nothing. And everybody kind of looked out for one another. Um, Whereas over here now, I come home and the first thing I do when I get in my own house, even though I'm in my own house, is lock the door behind me, which is a really like if you think about it, it's such a strange thing because you're in your house. Nobody should be nobody should be coming in your house. You'd be worried, like if you're out, yeah, lock it. But you're locking the doors when you're in your house, and you go into the car and you're making sure you're not parking on certain streets when you're going out to the supermarket because you don't want oh this street. You're likely to get your car smashed or robbed or whatever. And I think it's a breakdown of the level of respect for other people and other people's property or other, whether it be elders or whatever. Because I know when I was younger, if I'd have spoken to some of the um some like adults the way that some kids have spoken to me, I'd have been, clipped round the ear, taken
Mhm.
back to my mum and dad by that person, and then they would have clipped me around the ear as well for speaking to that person the same way. Whereas now, you know, and I'm not advocating anybody to hit a child, but that was the sort of level of respect that was expected.
Mhm.
Whereas now, I don't think you get that. Not in the Western world, anyway.
Sure. For sure, I mean, you have little kids calling their mom a bitch or something, like, it's crazy.
Yeah.
It's like it's crazy, yeah, but, yeah, I think in Japan, it is very different. It definitely was eye-opening, especially coming from where I've spent most of my life in San Francisco. Um, like, I mean, yeah, even, like, if you leave anything in your car in San Francisco, you're risking it being your window being smashed. I mean, and I live in a relatively safe neighborhood in San Francisco. Like, I mean, we feel safe walking around. Don't get me wrong, but our cars have been broken into in front of our house like many, many times. Um, and it's just, yeah, it's different culture, different laws. It's like I don't think that ever happens in Japan, but they also probably are a lot harsher on punishments. Yeah.
Where did you go when you were over there? Did you do like a lot of traveling around Japan?
Yeah, I was there for about 10 days and um we started in Tokyo and we kinda made our way to Kyoto and back, and on in between those 2 main cities, we stopped in all sorts of places. We went to, Lake Kawaguchi to see Mount Fuji, and we went to, um, kind of a smaller town where there's these snow monkeys that,
Oh, are they
sit.
the big, like, sort of shaggy ones?
Yeah, they're these monkeys and they, at certain times in the year, they go and they all gather around this hot spring, to stay warm, and so it was an awesome experience. I definitely recommend it, if they're there at the time that you're going, but yeah, it was like hundreds of monkeys all just it was fascinating to see, like, in their kinda wild natural habitat and just getting to look at, like, almost how their little, like, monkey society operates. I mean, it's funny, if you haven't been able to tell by, my that plump drawing and the way I speak about monkeys, I definitely have a fascination with
I honestly, it's
uh,
I you know, we were talking about people watching earlier, and every now and again when I'm doing it or when I'm thinking about it or, um well, it happened last night, and if you can get yourself into the mindset of like that objective mindset of sort of stepping out of society and stepping out of being a human for a period of time, however long it be. And, you know, sort of psychedelic experiences do help with being able to do that. And I've kind of been through that element. But if you look at people when they're in sort of a bar as as monkeys, these are just great apes. They are just like gorillas or monkeys or whatever they are. It's so fucking weird. It's such a strange thing to behold that in reality, this social structure that we have of like, you know, at the end of the week, everybody goes to the bar and they play pool or you know, play darts or whatever it may be. And everybody gets together and they have a sing song on the karaoke or whatever it may be in that bar. That is in essence what the snow monkeys were doing around the hot spring is they're all sort of getting together at the end of the year and sort of catching up and you know sort of speaking to one another of like, oh, how's your year been? Yeah, it I always find it like, yeah, I'm the one that's sort of wryly smiling to myself in the corner because that's what I'm thinking about, and I don't dare tell any of my friends that this is what's going through my brain at the minute because you'll all think I'm fucking weird, really weird.
yeah,
uh,
well, it's I mean, I've heard you mention that you don't drink,
no.
um, and, yeah, I always do sober October each year and sometimes other months of the year where I don't drink or smoke or anything, and I just go kinda completely just take life for what it is, and it's always a great experience, but I usually try to stay social while I do it, and occasionally I'll go out to the bars and be a designated driver, but I always have that same experience. Something about being sober around drunk people, you really realize, like, it's an interesting experience.
It's weird.
People are weird.
Yeah.
uh, and annoying sometimes, like
Oh, yeah. It gets too much, but I think I don't you know, and it's not sort of demonizing it at all because it's very much ingrained within our culture, and I do see the benefits of it, you know, from the social aspect. You know, people kind of build their lives around it because that's their sort of identity, and that's where their friends are. Their friends are in the pub and or in the bar, and and that's what they kind of live for. But I didn't have a problem. I wasn't sort of alcoholic or dependent or anything. I just kind of made the decision of instead of so it was after one my first run of psychedelic therapy, um, and I'd kind of experienced this substance, which in essence is the same as a alcohol, it's a drug, um, that expanded my mind rather than dumbed me down,
Mm,
and it
mhm.
made me go like it made me increase almost in intellect and introspection and whatever. Whereas with alcohol, it kind of don't get me wrong, there is benefits of lowering your inhibitions, and it kind of makes you. It used to make me sort of the wild person. I only saying yesterday that on a night out, I wouldn't generally know when to stop. So I'd be the person that would be climbing into the DJ booth at 2 a.m. in the morning saying, "This song's crap, let me play this song. I know what's," and not in a nasty way, but in like sort of, taking it too far. So it was the sort of subconscious decision of like, right, I'm not dependent on it, but I kind of want to give this a go. And yeah, it's been one of the best decisions I've ever made. And it doesn't really affect me when I kind of go out with my friends and I stay sober. It's just, yeah, I enjoy it in a different way.
Good for you. No, I think there's a lot to learn from sobriety, which is why I like to do it, pretty frequently, go just, like, completely sober, and it's almost like a whole new substance, especially if you've been going out and drinking a lot, then when you go out and you're sober, it's a whole new experience. But, yeah, I do have this kinda theory on substance use that I kinda would like to run by you, see what you
Go
think,
for it.
but, um, I think
Not
that
that, not that I've had amazing experiences with any substance whatsoever, Aiden, but but yeah, fire
Yeah,
away.
yeah, me neither, me neither, but, um, no, I think that a lot of substances, oftentimes they can show you that a certain mind state, like, I guess they can show you that a certain mind state is possible for you to be in, and then I think sometimes you can take that, and then you don't actually have to be on the substance anymore in order to use that mind state. So I find, like, you could take alcohol, for example, and you might notice how when you go out and you're drinking, alcohol might make you more loose and sociable, and you might be more goofy, and everyone and it almost enhances your likability. It can
Hmm.
enhance your likability and make you more charismatic. But I think if you take that and realize, "Oh, if I just loosen up a little bit and be more goofy and be more relaxed and be myself, I don't actually need alcohol to do all those things." And I think the same could go for other substances, like, how people say, like, weed can make you more, creative or more relaxed. It's like, I think you can obviously, there is some psychological mechanisms going on when you do smoke weed, but I think you can also just take the fact that, "Oh, if I just kinda, like, soften my mind state and just try to be more relaxed and try to be more open-minded," you can almost just, like, take that mind state that you have when you're smoking and just apply a similar thing when you're sober and reap the
100%.
benefits.
I think,
And I think that goes for any
yeah,
substance, really.
it relates back to sort of your prep, for your highlining and NLP and the whole thing with NLP is the fact that you visualize something which creates or is meant to create the neurological pathways within your brain to for muscle memory. And I've experienced it not experienced it at hockey yet, but I've experienced it at football, where
Mhm.
it was a cup game, and I remember we were playing a team that were considered. Well, I'm not massive. I'm 5'10", so they were all 6'2", massive guys, and been I'd had a dream that I was going to lob the goalkeeper, so I was going to chip it over the goalkeeper from about 30 yards. And lo and behold, in the game, a situation came where the goalkeeper was rushing out to me. I was outside about 30 yards, and it was just instinctual to sort of dink it over the keeper, and I scored an amazing goal. And it was like I only knew exactly what to do at that moment because of this sort of vision that I'd had. And I think, talking about NLP at the beginning and what the way certain substances show you how you can be. And you are right. I think, don't get me wrong, with the psychedelic therapy that I sort of went through, I wouldn't want to walk around as high as a kite on sort of psilocybin all day, because you'd never get anything done, because you'd be staring at your hands and thinking how amazing this is. But I think it does. I know for a fact, for me, on my second course, I was just over 16 stone at that point, and for somebody, I wouldn't say I was fat, but I wasn't what I'm used to being, um, which I'm now back down to 14. But what it did, one of the sessions, was it made me look at my body and think, "Holy shit, I'm not taking care of this. It's not mine. This is something that I need to really take care of. It's housing who I am." Um, and subsequent to that, it's putting whatever experience that I had whilst under the influence into action, like that sort of manifestation. I had the experience of, oh my God, I'm not looking after it. And if I did nothing with that information, I'd still be in the exact same point. But I managed to sort of, transport that into my sober life of like, right, well, gym membership back on. Within, I think, 4 months, I was down 2.5 stone, back to where I should be. But it does, and I think with substances like MDMA, that sort of, I know I've spoke with Erica about it, it's often called the love drug because of the way it makes you feel. It's it's like, I don't think you could feel like that all the time. However, when you do get opportunities, whether it be with your partner or your family members or whatever, you get that feeling of love. You can lean into it rather
Mhm.
than sort of, I think a lot of people kind of lean away because it makes them feel a little bit uncomfortable sometimes, depending on how you've been brought up. But I think what it can do is force you to recognize that and lean into it a little bit more. So yeah, I think there's a lot of lessons to be taken from. Don't get me wrong, like there's a lot of bad lessons. Like, I wouldn't advise anybody to go and sort of shoot up heroin and expect to
Yeah,
uh,
sure.
your life to be sorted out over a weekend. But I think, yeah, that it must create something within your sort of um, neurological pathways for you to be able to access them different sort of states. Like you say, in terms of creativity, it kind of just doesn't come from nowhere. It's within you, and it's this substance that kind of brings it out. The same with alcohol. When it lowers your inhibitions, it's just letting out your inner child again. And I think I did it with this. So when I, I've spoken about this before on previous episodes, but the podcast, starting the podcast, kind of came out of, I'd been in construction for a long time, and it wasn't really lighting my fire anymore. It wasn't. I was getting up in the morning thinking, "Oh, I've got to go to work today. I don't want to go to work today. I don't want to." And I used to love it, and I still do enjoy it, the creative element of it. But I kind of was in a bit of a limbo, wondering, what do I do? I need to find something that I enjoy to, and I want to do every year, every day. And it actually turned out, I took my partner, my missus, out for a date day to a restaurant near where we live. And I ended up speaking to the waiter for 2.5 hours because he was Muslim and I was Christian. I'm brought up Catholic, and we had a 2.5 hour conversation on religions. And I came out of the sort of restaurant. I don't think my missus was overly happy that I spoke to the waiter more than I spoke to her. But I just said, right, there's got to be something in that because I've come out of that restaurant and I feel alive. I feel more alive. I feel energized. It's lit a fire. And things had dropped into the path to sort of kind of point me down the route of podcasting and getting to speak to people like yourself that have, it's a window into. It's almost like people watching, but on like a global scale. I get to sort of get a window into your world of, you know, highlining, slacklining, art, sports, mindset. Um, and I think it's that sort of thing where it kind of all comes from recognizing it within your own, but it's always been in me. It's always been sort of there, bubbling under the surface. And before I posted the first episode, or I released 4 at the beginning, it's that embarrassment of like, holy shit, what if people don't like this? What if
Mhm.
what if I make a fool of myself? And then sort of you kind of think, well, who cares? Like I'm not doing it for anybody else. I'm doing it for me. I wanted to speak to you, and without sounding horrible, Aiden, if nobody else wants to listen to you, I wanted to listen to you for 2 hours. So
Yeah,
it's
yeah,
it's that sort of selfish element of, and I think people do. They have to be selfish to an extent. You can be nice with it, but do things
yeah.
for you, because you only get one go around on this big blue rock.
For sure. I think I've been thinking a lot about that. I think it's and, yeah, I've been thinking a lot about, I don't know, like, oh, like why are you posting on social media, or, yeah, what's the end goal with this? And sometimes you can get kinda lost in the mud, especially because, I mean, when that video that you showed earlier, the one that you discovered me through, like, when that video kind of blew up and got a lot of attention, I wasn't really expecting that, and, it went from just me being pretty certain that I was just posting on Instagram just for me, just to, like, have these memories, have, uh, kind of a compiled, packaged version of little adventures that I can look back on. That was really my main goal with it, and then all of a sudden this video blew up, and I had tons of people in my messages giving me different, um, "Can you market this product? Can you, like, you should do this to monetize your brand. You should start posting this type of videos. You should start doing this." And part of you wants to listen to that advice and learn how to make money with social media, but I've been reflecting on it a lot, and I think at the end of the day, like, you really just wanna do what's authentic to you, like, you really can't stop
Yes,
doing that, and, I don't know, that's what, like, I mean, it sounds like you kinda did that with your podcast. You were maybe at first worried about what people might think, and I felt that with Instagram too, but I've kind of began to rationalize, if you're doing what's authentic to you and it's cool to you, then who cares what anybody else thinks? Because somebody's always gonna not like it, and somebody
exactly.
will like it, you know?
Well,
So
it's that it goes back to what we were saying about sort of outgrowing your friendships, and you do have a little bit of grief for like, oh well, I've known this person for like 16 years. We've been like best buddies for 16 years, and now we used to speak every day, and now we speak once a year, once every 2 years, which is like really strange. We used to spend every weekend together, and I think that was the sort of realization moment for me, is the fact that it was the worry of, what if my current friendship group, what if my current circle don't click with and don't like what I'm putting out there. And then my thought process is, well, if I stay authentic to me and what I want to say and what I want to sort of get out there, and what I, like I said, from a purely selfish aspect, is like, I want to speak to these people because I find them amazing and interesting, and who wouldn't want to have a 2 hour conversation with somebody like Adan Shaw? Like, that's purely from my perspective. The people that do like this episode and do listen to this episode, they're my people. not the people that don't actually like it. And on the other side of embarrassment is where, everybody's looking for a tribe and for their where they belong. And on the other side of that embarrassment, if as long as you keep authentic like yourself, that's where you belong. You'll find where your people are, like you did with highlining. You kind of went
Mhm.
to your first highlining thing, and you were like, "Oh, holy shit! This is a bit of me. This is what I like. This is where and that's where it's grown from." Um, but I guarantee, probably the night before, you'd be thinking, "Holy shit! What am I going? What am I going to expect tomorrow?"
For sure. Yeah, I had no idea what to expect, and I mean, some of that's like there's always like social anxiety, right? Like even if you're a very like confident person, I feel like there's always some element of when you're meeting new people, it's like what are they gonna think of me or whatnot. But yeah, I've more and more recently I've been just whether it's online or in person, it's like I feel like if you can really like find a true sense of authenticity, I think that's what really drives confidence. I think it's when
Mm.
you start faking things and trying to cater to different people and code switching and trying to fit in, that's when you start kind of losing yourself and becoming less genuine, and I think that can really take away from your confidence in any situation.
Well, I mean, I kind of did it for years. That sort of masking,
Mhm,
and it was always like I always use humor generally to um diffuse that social anxiety that I feel. It was always like, right, if people are laughing at the things that I do and the jokes that I say, then they aren't noticing other bits that I don't want them to see. Um, and it becomes so tiresome. It's so tiring that at the end of whatever social event or setting that you've been in, you come away from that, and when you should feel sort of rejuvenated of seeing your friends, and it should be sort of almost like a social and an emotional recharge,
mhm,
your battery is empty because you've been putting on this performance for like 2, 3, 4 hours. Um, and whereas now, I think it's like it comes with age again. Like I've got to the age where I don't give a shit. Don't like me. See you in a bit. See you later.
mhm,
I don't care. Like there'll be somebody else round the corner that will like me and will like what I do and what I say. Um, so yeah, I think it's a massive thing to like. There was a thing recently in terms of vibrational. Um, I became aware of it after reading Vex King. Good Vibes, Good Life. It's a really good book.
mm,
Recommend anybody to read it. Talking about the vibrational frequencies of different feelings and and most people would think love would be the highest vibrational sort of state that you could be in, and it actually turned out to be authenticity was like 100 times more higher, was 100 times higher than love. And authenticity is one of the best vibrational spaces that you can be within. And I think it's so important that there's so much fakeness and bullshit around that you've got to be you've got to be authentic. It's a big thing. So I want to end on this, and I want to. It's another big question, so get ready. And I know
yeah.
we kind of touched on it. So you're doing your social media and you're doing artwork, and what's. I mean, how old are you now, Aiden? If you don't mind me asking.
I'm 24, almost 25.
So obviously you're over 10 years younger than I am. What what's the future? Are you just taking it day by day, or are you wanting to sort of? I know you mentioned about putting your sort of leaving your mark on the world and your fingerprints through landscape architecture. What's sort of the future for yourself? Do you see, or are you just taking it day by day?
Well, I think it's a little bit of both. I think I do a lot of taking it day by day, but also I feel like I have some pretty big plans for the future, and I'm just gonna kind of, yeah, see how I can go from one thing to the next. But um, in terms of I guess what I should say is I really want to combine a lot of my interests together and really create a life for myself where all of the interests and passions I have really work in conjunction with each other. And so I would love to eventually take some of my landscape architecture skills and my ability to design a place and create a place and combine that with my interests in activity, adventure, athleticism, and I wanna design spaces where people can learn how to explore their comfort zones through play. So that's one of the reasons why I've been doing some design work with, The Power of Play. It's a nonprofit. They build playgrounds all over the world. So I've been kind of building some skills and helping them design playgrounds in the Middle East, in South America, in Africa, and just opportunities for people to play and explore their comfort zones. I also got to see that a little bit when I was over in Japan, uh, with in this village where this guy Hayashi-san, um, in Rito, Shiga, right outside of Kyoto, he has built a whole kind of community center around slacklining, and he has a slackline playground that he built
Oh,
with
cool.
natural materials, and it was really cool to see how these little kids can go in there and kind of push past their fears in a safe way, and it was such a beautiful thing to see how that has cascading impacts on the community because there's these little kids that then become almost like professional athletes at a young age, and they're just have no fear, and they're super friendly and nice, and it just went out into the community, and you could tell that everyone was influenced by this. And so I think there's it's super important to have spaces like that, and so I really want to create outdoor spaces like that by building playgrounds and cool treehouse playgrounds with climbing walls and slack lines. And I also want to eventually, I was talking about this with a friend. It's kind of a lofty idea, but at some point I would like to own some sort of gym space where it's uh, similar to a climbing gym, but it would be a place where you could have a membership and people could come and they can do work. They can there's hammocks and mats where people can climb above and rings for them to work out and slack lines. Just kind of this kind of all-purpose warehouse that you could have a membership to. That would also act as kind of a another space for travelers like me to come by and be with the community. So, that was kinda long-winded, but I really just wanna create
It is.
spaces to do the things that I like to do.
That's awesome. I think, yeah, listen, if you're gonna have a dream, dream big. This is the best. There's no point in dreaming small. You gotta aim for the stars. And I think, yeah, it's a massive, massive thing. Like learning through play. I think I've spoken about it before on the podcast. It's such an important thing. There's a study that I read relatively recently where I think it increases like sort of retention by up to like tenfold if you learn through play. You're more likely to remember, like 10 times more likely to remember facts or things through play than you are just through like textbooks and comprehension and things.
Mm.
Um, and that was, I'll tell you a quick story before we plug all your Instagram and YouTube and end it. Is before the podcast started, I was having a crisis of confidence, like I mentioned, and I kind of wanted to get into the mindset of, that childhood abandonment of like a kid doesn't, a kid doing cartwheels in a park somewhere doesn't care whether, they're showing off their underwear or they, put their hand in dog crap or whatever. They're not bothered. It doesn't really come into their sphere. So I kind of wanted to get into that mindset. And I was having this crisis of confidence of like, who am I to request to speak to these people? I'm just a person from the north of England that, I've not done anything of, I'm not famous for anything. I've not done anything amazing or whatnot. I asked my daughter. My daughter was 9 at the time, and I said, like, this is what I'm facing. This is my scenario. How would you deal with it if you were in my position? What's your thought process? And and I'll say what she said word for word. And I don't know whether you know who Keir Starmer is. He's the British Prime Minister at the minute.
Okay.
And I mean, you've got one your end, but she said, "Well, Keir Starmer's a dickhead, and he runs a country." And I went, "Yeah, fair play. That's it, right? I don't need to worry about it anymore. Like, I'm sold. I'm so." And it was like seeing the world so simply through the eyes of a child just made so much more sense. Of like, yeah, why am I worried? Why do I care? All these people that think that they're better than you and profess that they're better than you, they're the exact same. They've got the same two lungs, heart, kidneys, liver. There's nothing different. You know, they're no better or worse than you are. So yeah, I think through play, it's and dreaming big and making sure that people get access. I really like the idea of like a workspace, which is like an adult jungle gym. That would be awesome. I don't know whether I'd be able to get to the top, but I'd definitely like to sort of people watching there for a bit. Um,
Yeah. Well, yeah, I think it's something that's really missing in adult life
hmm,
is that you can play and you can see how happy people can become and how many like we talked about getting rid of inhibitions through substances. I think like play and getting engaged in activities is one of the best ways to kind of return to that childlike sense where you really lose inhibitions and you learn things about yourself. And I mean, that's one of the reasons why I like highlining and like the highlining community, and also the reason why I think it's so important what that organization, the Power of Play, does. And so, yeah, I think that's kind of like an overarching area of congruency between all of my activities and all the things I love to do and the design work I want to do is like, play is a key aspect of all of that, so I think that's something I wanna promote in my work.
awesome.
Yeah.
Awesome. So if people want to follow you and follow your journey, and whether that be highlining or your adventures to Japan or your artwork, where do they find you?
Yeah, so my Instagram is a.danshaw, and I am on YouTube under the same username. I'm gonna be posting some videos shortly, I have a lot of ideas, and, got some videos up on TikTok as well under the same username, and, yeah, from there, you should be able to find me in some other places. I'm gonna work on start posting some writing, and I'm kinda just expanding and branching out and seeing what different platforms I like, but for now, Instagram is the main one. So
Yeah.
that's where most of my stuff is.
Awesome. Thank you very much. I massively appreciate it. It's been an awesome conversation. It's getting up for bedtime for me. So I don't know what time it is over there. Is it early afternoon? Um,
Yeah, it's probably 4 p.m.
oh well, you've got the rest of the day. It's getting up for 9 p.m. for me. So thank you very, very much. Thank you everybody for tuning in, and yeah, see you all next time.
Thanks, Lewis.